The contestants did not let the host off the hook easily, and Harvey was not too comfortable. Family Feud host Steve Harvey is usually the one who roasts contestants over absurd answers. But on rare occasions, the host finds himself on the receiving end of jibes. It happened on one occasion when Harvey faced harassment, although it was all harmless, and everyone involved laughed their hearts out. The host was asked the survey question, "What do you think Steve Harvey's wife would say is the best thing about him?" The important people from this segment are three women who belong to the Newman family. They were clearly sweet on the legendary host, and they made absolutely no secret of that. First up was a woman named Angie, who was just begging the host to ask her the question. Harvey was taken aback, and he spoke timidly. "Speak up," she exclaimed, before adding, "Can't hear you, Steve." After finally hearing the question, the contestant answered, "Those lips, Steve." A loud cheer erupted in the studio at that answer, and even the host could not help but smile. That was one of the correct answers on the board. Next up was a woman named Willow Joy, who was just as excited to take a question from Harvey. At this point, the host could not help but express how he was feeling. "You know what?" he said. "I've never been embarrassed. But like right now, I am actually nervous," Harvey added. He then asked Willow Joy the question, and she answered, "I'm gonna say his money." That was one of the correct answers on the board. By this point, the Newman family had no strikes, and that really seemed to exasperate the host. Next up to answer the question was a woman named Donna, who had the same energy as the two before her. "We can go on all night long," she said, after Harvey sighed that they had no strikes. He even ended up covering up his shirt with his suit at this point. "You ever felt somebody staring at you?" he asked, before adding, "I mean, they are breathing behind me and everything." Before the host could even finish asking the survey question, Donna cut him off and answered, "I think it's those gorgeous dimples, Steve." Unfortunately, that was the first incorrect answer of the round. However, nothing compares to Willow Joy's second answer, which caught everyone off guard. Her answer was explicit to say the least, and Harvey was left speechless for a few seconds. However, it was not one of the correct answers. The Newmans had conceded all three strikes in the round, but the competing family was not able to capitalize. In the end, the Newman family ended up victorious. The bright lights, the roaring applause, and the familiar swagger of Steve Harvey walking onto the Family Feud stage usually meant one thing: the audience was in for a good time. But on this particular taping, a seemingly normal Tuesday afternoon, the studio was about to witness one of the most awkward rounds in the show's history. Steve had just finished joking with the contestants, a lively pair of families who laughed at everything he said. He straightened his tie, flashed his signature grin, and held up a card. "All right, you all," he said, lowering his voice dramatically. "We asked 100 people. Name something a man might compliment about his friend's wife." The crowd instantly reacted, some laughed, some gasped, and Steve paused, closing his eyes as if asking the heavens why he of all people got stuck with this kind of question. "Oh Lord. They tryin' to get me in trouble today," he muttered, pacing a few steps. "Y'all know I can't be reading this mess. I got a wife who watches everything I do." His playful panic only made the moment funnier, and the audience erupted. The first answer sets the tone. The Johnson family buzzed in immediately. "Her smile," shouted Tiffany, the youngest daughter, beaming at Steve. Steve slapped the podium dramatically. "That's a good answer. Nice, safe, and holy. Like Jesus wanted." The board flipped. "Smile, number 3. The Johnsons cheered, and Steve sighed with relief. Praise God somebody started this round off right. But that relief would not last long. The opposing team, the Russells, prepared to steal if the Johnsons slipped. And slipping was exactly what they were about to do. Trouble begins. Next up was Uncle Pete, a loud, overly confident man who said whatever came to his mind, without hesitation or filter. "Pete," Steve said cautiously, "name something a man might compliment about his friend's wife. And think carefully before you open that mouth." Pete folded his arms. "Steve, I got this. I'm a gentleman." Steve stepped back like he didn't believe that for 1 second. Pete grinned. "Her body." The crowd exploded, half laughing, half groaning. Steve froze. He stared at Pete like he had just confessed to a federal crime. "My brother," Steve said slowly, "do you like livin'?" The board dinged. Figure, number 1. The Johnsons cheered again. But Steve stood stiff as a statue, blinking. "This show gon' get me divorced." He wandered off the stage for a moment like he needed a break. The audience laughed as the camera captured him mumbling to himself. The awkward turn. By the third answer, things were getting riskier. Tiffany's sister, Monique, stepped up to the podium. "Hair?" she guessed. Steve nodded. "Nice and respectable. See, that's what I'm talking about." The board revealed hair, number 4. But then came the fourth contestant, Mrs. Johnson herself, the mother of the family, sweet, polite, and always smiling. She clutched her hands nervously, glancing at her husband and then back at Steve. "Okay, Mama J," Steve said gently. "You look scared." "I am," she admitted. "Because I know how some men talk." The audience hollered at that. "Just give me an answer," Steve coaxed. "A safe one." "Well," she said hesitantly, "maybe. Her clothes? Like, her style?" The board flipped. "Clothes, number 5. "So far, so good," Steve said proudly. "We keepin' it classy." But then came the final answer, and the moment that would go viral. The youngest Johnson child, Marcus, barely 19 years old, stepped up. He was shy, fidgeting with his hands, clearly uncomfortable with the entire subject. "Marcus," Steve said softly, "you the baby of the family. I trust you." Marcus took a breath. "Well, I guess. Maybe a man would compliment his friend's wife's." He paused. The audience leaned forward. "Her cooking?" The board flicked. X. Steve nodded approvingly. "See? Even when you're wrong, you're right." He patted Marcus on the back and turned to the family. "Y'all got one X, keep it together." But before he could move on, Pete, who had no filter, no patience, and no sense of boundary, shouted from the side, "Y'all know what the answer is." Steve spun around. "Sir, please. We tryin' to keep this show family friendly." Pete ignored him. "It's obvious. It's her legs." The studio gasped. Steve dropped his cue cards. Literally. "Oh, hell no." He stared at Pete. "You out here trying to get everybody's marriage in trouble?" He turned to the control booth. "Why y'all write questions like this? Y'all trying to get me stabbed by my wife?" But Pete wasn't done. "Steve. You know men notice legs." A beat of silence. Then the board flashed. "Legs, number 2." The crowd roared. The Russells groaned. The Johnsons danced. And Steve? Steve just stood there, deadpan, silently regretting every career decision he had ever made. The plot twist, the final answer. There was one last answer left on the board, number 6. And this was the moment everything turned from awkward to pure chaos. It was back to Marcus since they were rotating again. Steve leaned down to him. "Son. Listen to me carefully. Don't say nothing stupid." Marcus nodded. "I won't." "Okay," Steve breathed. "Name something a man might compliment about his friend's wife." Marcus thought deeply. Then, shyly, he said, "Her personality?" The board lit up. X. Steve sighed. "I tried to save you all." The Russells now had a chance to steal. Their captain, Simone, stepped up. "Simone," Steve said, "before you answer, let me warn you. My wife watches this show. My wife reads lips. My wife can sense when I even think the wrong thing." The audience cracked up. Simone smirked. "Steve. The last answer is her eyes." The board revealed. Eyes, number 6. The Russells stole the round. The Johnsons groaned. The audience cheered. But then, without warning, Steve's wife Marjorie walked onto the stage. The entire studio screamed. Steve almost tripped. "Baby," he said carefully. "What you doing here?" Marjorie folded her arms. "I heard the question." The audience laughed so hard the cameras shook. "Now," she said, looking at Pete, "WHO said legs?" Pete suddenly shrank. "It wasn't me. It was the devil." Steve nearly collapsed laughing. "Ha. Now you scared." Marjorie shook her head. "Steve, I love you. But don't you ever act like you don't know the right answers to these questions." Steve stared. "What's the right answer?" Marjorie raised an eyebrow. "My cooking." The whole place erupted in laughter. Steve threw his hands up. "That ain't even on the board." But Marjorie marched over, kissed him on the cheek, and whispered, "It should have been." The moment instantly became one of the most replayed clips in Family Feud history. Fans online couldn't stop laughing. Memes exploded across social media: Steve's expression, Pete's fear, Marjorie's entrance, the legs reveal. It was comedy gold. Steve joked about it for weeks afterward during other episodes. And Marjorie? She teased him daily. But deep down, Steve loved every second of it. Because awkward or not, wild or not, those moments were why Family Feud was iconic. And why Steve Harvey, tight suits, wide mustache, exasperated expressions and all, remained the king of game show chaos.